Welcome into the Happy Recap podcast for this week of August 30th, 2000. Boy, it's hard to believe, EJ, that as we're getting going with the show here today, we're just about wrapping up basically the month of August, one full month left in the Major League season. We're past the halfway mark, and somehow, despite all efforts to the contrary, we have a baseball team that is still in the course of a playoff berth, and a lot of things happening this week. Lot of things happening, and I think I want to start a little out of order for the week, so to speaking. We'll start with Friday night, as quite a few things were going on around the world in general. Nonetheless, what was going on in you had the Bronx going on. We had a doubleheader up there, bunch of debates on that, and then in the midst of a news story that I think would have gotten a little bit more noticed by the Mets occurred. But certainly, I also wanted to mention, and because of his amazing prowess as an actor, that was also about the exact same time we had found out that Chadwick Boseman had passed away, who, of course, in the baseball circles is best known for his role as Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, someday there could be a 30 for 30 based on the event of Friday night alone. Um, First, you basically have the Mets with their largest comeback of the year against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. Then you have the Mets walking off a game in Yankee Stadium, which is just unheard of. Then you immediately get the news about Steve Cohen, which was just at that point it went from good night to great night to incredible night, and then the unfortunately sobering news of Chadwick Boseman's passing, which again, it just can't predict baseball season. I mean, the guy who had just recently played Jackie Robinson in a film passing away on what was dedicated as Jackie Robinson Day due to the fact that we couldn't celebrate the usual one in April, considering we weren't playing baseball in April. It was really one of those just odd real life in the sports world kind of colliding at the same time.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those weird things. And so it's like for a while there, I didn't even quite catch the Steve Cohen news as it had broken because it was so close to the movie news and the Chadwick Boseman news that it was just didn't everything in my feed was Black Panther, Jackie Robinson, Chadwick Boseman, yada yada yada. And then I catch this Steve Cohen, J Lo, A Rod, and my entire focus shifted at least briefly there as we learned that Steve Cohen is once again in exclusive negotiations with the Wilpons to purchase the New York Mets, a move that is expected to succeed potentially as early as this week.
It's incredible. I mean, the elation that I think we all felt as Mets fans, this has been something that has basically we've been begging for since Nelson Doubleday gave up his portion of ownership of the team. I think we've all really just so badly soured on the Wilpons. We all know what their financial situation has been. We all know they should not be owning a major league team of any regard, never mind one in the biggest market in the country. And it seems like not only are we getting rid of the Wilpons, but we are getting in return the owner that we deserve as Mets fans, the owner that after 20 plus years of the Wilpons having sole ownership of this team, that we deserve a guy who A, loves the New York Metropolitans, and B, has a ton of cash to sink into the team.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly, we've never really truly had anything like this before. I mean, a lot of people will give credit to Nelson Doubleday prior to Fred Wilpon spending a lot of cash on this team, and there were pockets of times where he did do that.
Yep.
And he was a fantastic owner. What I'm about to say is not to take credit away, but the first thing that happened when the worst team money could buy was assembled didn't pan out, he sold it off. And right to an extent, rightfully so. But I think you're also looking at a guy who the entire decade of the 80s never signed a major league free agent. Not one. Minor league free agent, sure, he picked up plenty. Trades made a lot. But free agents, they did not, him and Frank Cashen did not believe in free agency. They did not believe in spending that kind of cash. They'd hand out extensions, but they did not hand out free agent contracts. And so one of those things I like to remind people is this would be the first time that you have a potentially game-changing kind of spender involved in the Mets franchise. Certainly, Nelson Doubleday did a better job of keeping pace than the Wilpons did. But it's definitely a changing ball game, and the Mets are on the forefront of it. And what they look like right now, because of this change that occurred in the quiet of the night on a Friday night in August, this is the ultimate game changer right here.
I mean, to put it in perspective, the day he takes over control of the Mets, he immediately becomes the single richest owner in Major League Baseball. So that is definitely something that we have never even come close to experiencing before. And, I do have to be fair to Fred. As you brought up, there were times that Fred did spend. He
Yep.
didn't spend wisely, but if you look at the early 2000s of the Mets, your Jeremy Bernitzes, your Mo Vaughns, he brought in Robbie Alomar, who was making
Pedro.
money. Pedro. He has spent drunkenly at times. The problem has always been that every year it was one huge big ticket free agent, a Billy Wagner, a Pedro, a guy like that. And it was almost like, okay, here's the one guy, now everything is solved, where he never took it that next step to get that second, third, fourth guy. I attribute it in many regards to what happened to Patrick Ewing as a New York Knick, where he was always the star, but he was never given the star to come play next to him. And I think that happened a lot in the early 2000s, middle 2000s, when it came to Fred Wilpon. And also, I don't know how involved Jeff was during those years as well. I think a lot of the organizational philosophy changed when Jeff started getting more control away from his father and started getting his input heard as far as building a proper team. But I don't think that Fred Wilpon was a terrible owner. I think he fell into a terrible financial situation that completely hampered his ability to be a good owner any further.
One of the things that they over the years and I say this anecdotally, these are stories that I've heard anecdotally, that the Mets would give projects to Jeffrey Wilpon. One of which was the stadium project in Brooklyn, and developing and he did so very successfully. Developed the Brooklyn Cyclones franchise into a powerhouse down in Brooklyn. But the main project that he was given in his time with the New York Mets was Citi Field. Now, if you look at the decade of the zeros, if you will, the aughts, whatever you'd like to call it, when is Citi Field open? 09. When do the Mets start going downhill that decade? 09. Is that a coincidence? Is it not? That's a good question, and it's not, certainly worth bringing in a couple of our friends over the coming months of, once we hit the postseason to kind of analyze that, or the Greg Princes of the world, because I think everybody would have different opinions, but I look forward to hearing them. But my inkling is that is when you start to see a lot more intervention from Jeff Wilpon, and a lot more of his, let's just say, unwelcome viewpoints to many.
Right. And I think that there probably were some budgetary restraints that were put on him when it came to the build of Citi Field that were probably far exceeded, which also led to us having to really reduce payroll due to Citi Field. Don't get me wrong, I love the building, and it's a wonderful facility, but I think that it definitely did change the economic foundation of this team prior to the Madoff scandal was even announced.
Well, you also have to realize too. I mean, and this is, again, I'm not going to play defender the Wilpons here, because there isn't a whole lot of defense for a whole lot of what they did. But at the time that Shea Stadium was replaced and Citi Field brought in, was also the very beginning of the Great Recession. You've just built a brand new, nearly $1 billion stadium that you've got to pay off now. And nobody wants to buy spot ads. Nobody can afford that billboard in center field. Nobody can. You have to put up a lame "Let's Go Mets" sign above the screen, because one, you couldn't get the size screen you originally wanted because it was too expensive, and two, you wanted too much for that ad space. So you had a bunch of different problems going on with Citi Field, almost outside of the control of the Wilpons, with the recession going on. So you were off to a bad start to begin with. What the stadium needed was obviously somebody who could turn that around quicker. That certainly could have helped, but you look at somebody like Steve Cohen, and it'll be very interesting to see, even in the stadium by next spring, if we see differences.
Oh,
Nothing
I
major, but I wouldn't be surprised if the differences you see come 2021 will extend beyond the roster and makeup of the New York Mets.
I think you'll definitely be seeing some changes. I think first and foremost, as I've said many times, the guy loves the team. So I think he's going to want to celebrate more of the Mets heritage. And we can go back and forth all day long about the Jackie Robinson Rotunda, the fact that he never played for the Mets, blah, blah, blah. At this point, I've come to really embrace the Rotunda. It is part of our history. Mrs. Robinson has always been great coming to celebrate with the Mets on the anniversary. I just think that we have to embrace that. But if you tell me that next year you're walking into Citi Field and the color scheme of the seats is back to the good old blue and orange, I'll buy it and I'd love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think nobody would be offended to Mets the place out a little bit more than it already is. It certainly would make a lot of fans happy, make a lot of fans feel more at home. I mean, certainly over the years, Citi Field has felt more and more like home, as certain things have occurred and certain games have happened, and World Series games have been played there now, and All-Star games, etc. But you look at the stadium, and there's still some work to do to make it just a little bit more, to take a phrase from Casey, a bit more Metsy. Metsy needs a little bit more
Yeah,
Metsy.
yeah, I agree. I mean, look at it. You've got the dark green seats. That's not Metsy. All of our vendors wear Phillies burgundy colored shirts. That's not Metsy. I can see a lot of that. A lot of that changing on Cohen's watch. And let's be honest, given the amount of money the guy has, that's not going to be a huge economic undertaking for him to make some of those changes, and wouldn't hamper his ability to change the roster at all.
Well, like for example, a couple of years ago, many years ago now, the Nintendo company, the president of the Nintendo company, bought the Seattle Mariners. And as far as I know, I think he only ever went to one Mariner game. But you have an owner there who never sees a team. This is not a guy who's been sitting around looking at major league teams looking for an investment like this. This is a guy who's been sitting around dreaming of owning the New York Mets for years. In other words, a lot of the things that you and I are talking about right now, EJ, are things he's been thinking about for years. This isn't going to be necessarily, I'm going to come in, I'm going to watch for a year or two, see what I need to see what I need to do, and then start in earnest making actions. Like, no, I've known that the seats need to be blue and orange for 10 years. That's happening now. We're ordering those seats tomorrow. I've priced them out. They're ready to go. I mean, that kind of thing. I expect, not that on every type of thing, but I think you're going to see a few of those needs, and few of those wants addressed immediately, because he's been thinking about them longer than you and I.
Well, this is the greatest part about him being an actual fan. There isn't a
Yep.
fan alive who hasn't played fantasy owner in their head. We've all done it. I've spent hours doing it, of what I would do to change the team, what I would do to change the stadium, what I would do to change the culture. And obviously, he's a fan like us, just with a whole lot more money that he can make it a reality. So I'm so excited to see what he will bring to this franchise, to this organization. He's going to be living out his dream, and we all get to live it out through him, which is going to be great. And I do love the fact that, as I said, I don't think that Fred Wilpon was a bad owner. I think Jeff Wilpon was a bad owner. I think Jeff Wilpon was a bad influence. And I mean, I can't help but love the fact that after the news comes out Friday, the first thing Saturday morning says is basically that Jeffrey's been shoved in the closet for these new negotiations of round two because he so badly botched the first negotiations. And sure enough, then the news comes out that, could you imagine? We love our kids, man. Imagine if your kid cost you $200 million just because he didn't like the guy that you were selling the team to. That's exactly what Jeffrey did here. And it's going to be a nice cherry on top of what will be Jeff Wilpon's legacy.
It actually reminds me, and I hate saying this. Oh, boy, I'm sure you're going to nail me on this, and you have every right to. It reminds me of an episode of Full House where they're going to sell the house. And Michelle doesn't want to move, so she sets up all these things around the house to make it look like the roof was leaking, etc. That kind of thing, trying to spoil that sale. Now, the main reason I know that is I have a 5-year-old who is addicted to classic Full House on Hulu. Let me state that clear. So Full House is on, at least half the day some days, especially in the midst of lockout. There have been definite days of lockout binges of Full House in our house. Um, um, help.
Well, I'm 42,
Send
so
help.
I have no excuse, but I know the exact episode you're referencing.
I think you have to. I mean, I'm 45 now, so I mean, we all grew up watching it, so it's indelibly plowed into our memories. But having to rewatch them now, oh boy, oh boy. But that being said, it's exactly the same type of thing. I mean, with Fred, I talk about this a few times. In 2003, I met Fred Wilpon at spring training and got to talk to him for about 5 minutes. It was before a game. He was just standing there watching the team, and we just talked Mets. Dude knew his stuff. I mean, dude was on his game. He knew his stuff, and I think it was the one of the another fan came up and said, the best guy you signed all fall. He's like, who's that? He goes, Tony Clark, who of course now the president of the union, and turned out that year to actually be the best free agent the Mets had acquired because they pretty much all busted. And he was like, really, why do you say that? And he really genuinely wanted to know why the fan gave an intelligent answer. Nobody was insulting him. Nobody was trying to get him in a catch me. He signed autographs for the fans. He took pictures. I just walked away going, that's a genuinely decent guy. That being said, I don't imagine I'd have the same experience with Jeff Wilpon. And, of course, 15 years, 17 years later or whatever, people change too. Who knows what Fred's like today? But the one thing we know is whoever does Fred's press releases these days has issues spelling Brody.
Well, Jeff's as well. So
Yep.
it happened to both of them. And man, we haven't even touched on that whole situation yet. But it was funny because when Citi Field opened, I remember when Jeff was basically doing a victory lap by greeting fans in the rotunda. And I very rarely would use this word to describe Jeff Wilpon, but I thought that was really brave of him because he was pretty hated at that point anyway. And to be face to face with the fans was a pretty bold move. But I agree. I think Fred is a good person. I think I've read reports that he was deeply, deeply hurt by what happened with Madoff, a man he considered to be a confidant. I don't know that he ever fully recovered from that, but I think Fred's a good man. I think hopefully he gets to go enjoy what a billionaire retires like. And for the fans who are on Twitter, who are very, very vocal the past couple of days about, oh my God, how could we allow Jeff to maintain a 5% ownership stake in this team? Chillax, guys. A 5% ownership is not going to dictate anything to Steve Cohen.
And the reality of it is he already owns 4.
Right. It's those glamour shares that they sold a few years ago, the ones that Bill Maher had, Jeff had grabbed the claim of it.
I think Maher still does, in fact.
He does. Yep. So those are nothing more than glamour shares. They have no actual controlling interest.
Correct.
And I guarantee you, Steve Cohen might accept a Christmas card from Jeff Wilpon once a year or a Hanukkah card once a year. But aside from that, I don't think there's going to be much interaction between the two.
I was going to say those are going to be Hanukkah cards, but
Right.
yeah, they're all Jewish families, and I think you're very right. I don't think there's going to be much love lost there at all, and I think that I'm not particularly concerned about the fact that I'm sure what the reality of it is that it's part of Jeff's nest egg. And it's here's your 5% of the Mets, and I hope it grows for you a little bit, that kind of thing. And I'm sure it is a purely financial investment.
Exactly. That's exactly it. That's to maintain some semblance of dignity that, I'm still partial owner of the Mets and I'm still generating income from the Mets. And if that's what he needs to save face, but get Steve Cohen in here as the controlling owner, I'm fine with it.
If it gets you the ladies in Midtown, I own part of the Mets. Woo, go for it.
Right, exactly. It's of no consequence to us on a day-to-day basis.
No, and it shouldn't be. I mean, that's certainly one of those where I thought that was a bit of a you're stressing yourself out for no reason kind of things, which our dear fans on Twitter are known to do.
Right, exactly. It's just this has been just an insane week to follow this team and to follow Major League Baseball. And as expected, Mets Twitter did not disappoint.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly, there is no story going on that we are purposely ignoring here. I just want to make sure we may not cover it all, and we definitely are covering it in what I would call ADHD format. No, that's not some new high definition. That's attention deficit disorder,
Right.
which I definitely have. I'm not making fun of it. Oh, well, I can make fun of it. I have it, but that's beside the point. The reality of it is my head's still swimming over everything this week, and certainly the protests, the boycotts, again, the 42, all of those, all those things going on throughout the sport, and then to have one of the most eventful weeks in Mets history, including players up, down. How many games? I mean, how many games are they playing? They skip one game with the Marlins. Now that game is tomorrow. So I mean, there's a lot of things, a lot of moving pieces in this week that I want to just say right now, with as we're about halfway through the show, that we ain't getting everything, and it's unfortunate and it's not intentional. It is just so overwhelming this particular week. I cannot, EJ, remember a week in Mets history, certainly in the nearly 9 years we've been doing this podcast, between the two versions of it, that we had this much going on. I think we can safely put some of these roster changes aside right now. That's not important, but let's talk about one thing on the lighter side, and then obviously, as we get towards the end, we can talk about some of that more serious stuff that the world of sports will continue to have to face. The 7-inning doubleheader. We saw our first two of them now, and we've got another one today as we're getting ready to record. They're getting ready to play it, and hopefully, that you've got. Not anymore coming. We don't play the Oakland A's anytime this year, and they're the latest COVID team, so we don't have to worry about doubleheaders there. But you look at it, and I kind of wanted to get your take. The 7-inning no-hitter, very controversial. Some people do not like it. Some people, and this is the other side of it that I find interesting, like it a little too much.
Yeah, I kind of may have fallen into that latter category a little bit. And I think it's only because we're coming off the high of the Mets sweeping one of those 7-inning doubleheaders and doing so in such incredibly dramatic fashion the way they do. And also, when you look at a team that is so incredibly decimated by injuries, particularly in the pitching department, that you're starting to think, hey, if there's any way to shave 4 innings off of a traditional doubleheader, if any team could benefit from that, it's the Mets. I mean, we have guys who are just absolutely gassed right now. And I think, yeah, we're pulling guys up. We're sending guys down, back and forth. We got the taxi squad going in full effect when it comes to the bullpen. But the reality is outside of Jake DeGrom, you're getting absolutely no length from your starters right now. Our relievers are gassed. So if we're going to be forced to play these double headers, the 7-inning variety is more beneficial to the Mets. That said, I don't consider any type of no-hitters or any type of records that may fall due to the length of the game. I don't consider them to be legitimate at all.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that's kind of the thing. And the funny thing is, the grand debate, of course, that was going on with Gary, Keith, and Ron and probably has gone on in dozens of broadcast booths this year, is if you're pitching a perfect game and there's no score and it goes into extras after 9 innings, does it become a perfect game? And can it? Because in the 8th and 9th innings, they put somebody on second base.
Right. Yeah. It's all the
It's
complexities
it's
of
it's
it.
the complexities of it.
Yeah. It makes
Um,
no sense.
the thing that was I was against it from the get go. Having gone to minor league ball games for years, I've been to more than a few 7-inning no hitters, 7-inning doubleheaders, and actually I almost went to a 7-inning no hitter. But had a pitcher in AAA back in '93 take one out into the sixth. So 2 outs from a no hitter. Some Mahomes guy. I think his son did something. I'm not sure. But anyway, the still the closest I've ever been to seeing one actually in person. But I've seen a few of them in minor leagues. They make sense. They have context. Major leagues, I just can't do it. But coming into this week, I certainly recognized that it was going to save Met pitching somewhere around 12 innings, and that's huge. I mean, that's more than a whole game right there. When you're playing 3 extra to be able to go, hey, we can take a game and a third off, basically, of pitching. Yeah, okay, you've sold me for the rest of the season on the 7-inning doubleheader, but I want no part of 7-inning games next year. I want no part of 7-inning doubleheaders, and those people that are suggesting that games properly should be 7 innings, including our old friend Mark Corrig at The Athletic. No way, no how. 9 innings is a baseball game. 9 innings.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Keith and Ron have been pretty vocal about it, and I'll tell you what, sitting down to yesterday's game, it was like, oh, great, a normal 9-inning game. This is exactly what I wanted. And that was coming off the high of the 7-inning doubleheader. So it's kind of all over the place right now. But again, while yesterday was not the outcome we would have wanted, we ended up seeing a pretty great game. And that game never would have turned into such a great game if it wasn't for the fact that Wilson Ramos was able to bat in the 8th inning. So I think 9 innings need to be the norm, but I can live with them and understand the need for them in this shortened season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm with you 100% on that. That's exactly where I am. As we kind of get a little bit close to the end of the broadcast, I kind of want to take a little bit time out and, certainly I think the events of this week, outside of the baseball world, in the so-called real world, as we like to refer to it, and where possible try to avoid, but certainly came in and affected baseball in a very significant way, affected sports in a very significant way. But from the Mets standpoint, I wanted to look at Dominic Smith, our boy Dom, and the effect that he not only had on his teammates, the effect that he not only had on Mets fans, but the fact was his passionate words made every news broadcast for the next day, almost around the world. I saw clips of Dom's press conference on BBC, and the passion, the hurt, the genuine pain and desire for change in his face melted a nation. And I think that from my standpoint, I know this is going to sound, it's certainly not meant self-serving, but we had him on the show. And if you ever have the time to go through our archives, this is one worth digging out. The week he was drafted, 17-year-old kid. And I remember telling EJ before that interview, this is the first time we're interviewing somebody young enough to be my kid. He's 17 years old. And even that day, I could not believe, after we were done with that interview, that was a 17-year-old kid. The poise, the maturity, the attention to detail, the student of the game, the desire to play and to play well and play right was all evident in him at that point already. And it had been instilled in him by his mentors and those around him as he grew up. And I think more than anything, I mean, there's so many things I can't say anything to what he said. I've not lived what he's lived. I've not experienced what he's experienced. But I'm touched. He made me want to learn more. He made me want to know more. And he made me so damn proud to be a fan of him personally.
No doubt about it. In the history of this podcast, in one version or another, I've had the guys that I have had my irrational at times man crushes on, from your Corey Vaughns, from your TJ Riveras, and most recently to your Dom Smiths, who we've been singing his praises since we've restarted this podcast in this form.
Yes.
I think we've mentioned him on every single episode in a glowing, positive manner. And that was before everything that's happening in the world is happening now. It started of us bemoaning the fact he wasn't going to get as many at-bats as we would have liked, to cheering the fact that with Cespedes opting out, he was going to George Floyd happening and Dom speaking out publicly about that and really being a face of the team and an ambassador of the team with his feelings about that, to the most recent events and his heartfelt post-game news conference on Wednesday night. It got me emotional. It got everybody emotional. It helped. I believe it truly did. Because like you said, I'm sure there were guys in clubhouses, both of the Mets and the Marlins, who want to learn more now because of what Dom said. And for them to come out unified in the way that they did and just lay a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on the plate and then take off, I thought was a beautiful gesture. I thought it was so symbolic and just so incredible of the unity and the healing that desperately needs to take place in this country. And like you, I am proud that one of hopefully those very continued, very vocal voices through that healing and that unification will be Dom Smith, because I think he can truly, truly be something of a trailblazer. And it's so just amazing that this is all happening when we decided to celebrate the life of Jackie Robinson, that we decided to do Jackie Robinson Week as all of this was going down. And Dom was kind of leading us in the forefront. I just can't wait to keep listening to him, keep learning from him, and just keep letting him be a face and a voice of reason in a country that is so damn irrational right now.
And the kicker is he's more than just a voice of reason. He's a man of action. And the fact that he takes his time in his off season, and he's back home in South LA organizing kids baseball. And I don't know what most people know about Major League Baseball and the black population today, but it's embarrassing. The numbers of black people playing baseball anymore it's certainly not a pre-Jackie numbers by any means, because that'd be zero, but it is way closer than it needs to be. And the last number I heard was a couple of years ago now, and it was 11%. And I don't think it's any higher. In fact, my guess is it's several percentage points lower. 6 to 8% would be my guess today. And that's a crime. Jackie broke the color barrier so that they could play. They just wanted to play. And they were some of the best players. As I've told so many people over the years, you want to know the best baseball going on in the 30s and 40s? Look at the Negro Leagues. That's where it was happening. It was better. The players were better. The reality of it is that he's a man of action. He puts his money, he puts his action, he puts it all where his mouth is. He lives it out. And I think of myself on the couch the other day, and I'd stubbed my toe on a Lego. And, when you have a 5-year-old, you stub your toe on a few Legos. And I remember asking my wife to get me a soda, and she grabbed the soda for me. And, then I hear Chadwick Boseman spent the last 4 years of his life performing T'Challa and other roles while dying of cancer. And I see Dom Smith, who's busy as all heck trying to become a big leaguer, spending time with kids. And I'm asking for a damn soda on the couch. What the hell is wrong with me?
What the hell is wrong with all of us? Because we've all had those moments.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, the numbers of African-American kids playing baseball is criminally low right now. I agree with you. And to have ambassadors like Dom trying to increase the awareness of the game to the African-American community is great. But at this point, I turn to Major League Baseball, because this is something that Curtis Granderson has been very active in. Now Dom Smith has been very active in. And you know what? Curtis Granderson and Dom Smith have never been, quote unquote, one of the faces of Major League Baseball. You want to get the youth, and not just the African-American youth, just the youth in general, which has turned apathetic towards the game of baseball. You make guys like Dom Smith one of the faces of your game. You show exciting guys, socially relevant guys, guys who have an opinion and aren't afraid to speak it. For years, Major League Baseball has buried their head in the sand when it came to the usage of social media, which we all know the youth are completely invested in right now. Now, the time has come for them to start embracing technology, embracing their energetic and exciting players, and embracing the people of color that they have that are really going to drive this game as we move forward further into this century. You need to stop being the boring old sport, and you need to start embracing the social relevance that these guys bring to the game. You want to get the youth involved, you want to get the African American community involved, that's a damn good way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of it is these are the guys to do it. And
Absolutely.
I speak so highly. I mean, whether you want to, Sandy, the Wilpons, whoever you want to give credit for, whoever's idea it was, whoever's, really pushed for it, one of the best people the Mets ever signed was Curtis Granderson. One of the best people to ever wear the blue and orange is Curtis Granderson. And I think in a few years, we'll say the two of the best people were Curtis Granderson and Dom Smith. There's nothing against anybody else that ever pulled on that blue and orange. There have been some great, great people, and there have been some Dykstras, but the reality of it is when you look at it and what they have brought to the community and what they have brought to the table and what they've brought to the conversation is so valuable that it's something we certainly haven't seen in a generation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been proud to root for both of those guys.
Yep.
And I do agree that when all is said and done, Dom Smith is going to be remembered as more than just a really good first baseman.
Yeah, and I think, and again, this is nothing against how we how we idolize our baseball players and what we do. This isn't crying on the field after thinking you're getting traded. And nothing against Wilmer, love Wilmer. This isn't handing the second out to a kid in the outfield like Benny, and those that's endearing. Those are endearing qualities. These are enduring qualities, and I think that's so important to note. And to me right now, speaking August 30th, 2020, Dom spending any day of his career not in blue and orange is a crime. Every day, that is a crime. I hope he's here to the day he's done. And then if he wants to stick around, let him. I mean, he does truly present to be one of the greats.
Yeah, Dom should definitely be a lifetime Met. He is one of those guys. You look at him in the same regard that you looked at an Edgardo Alfonso, who's now stayed in and out of the organization post retirement. You want Dom to be one of those guys. He gets it. It makes sense from both a on the field and off the field perspective. He's just a good guy, and I just want to keep following him.
Absolutely. Well, I think that'll wrap things up for this week. Like I said, unfortunately, quite a few things that we didn't get to, but quite a few things we did. So that certainly helps us. But knock a few things off of the old list. We had 2 off days this week. We don't anymore. We've got, but quite a few games going on. But we'll be back next weekend with some more information, and certainly should anything finalize with Mr. Cohen, we'll certainly try and round up a guest or two and see if we can't throw a little bit of a show together to kind of discuss the finalizations of what that deal may or may not look like when it occurs.
Sounds good, my friend.
Any final thoughts, sir?
That's it. Let's go win some baseball games and try to feel a little sense of normalcy for a minute.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's what would be nice, get through these 7-inning doubleheaders and back into baseball. And, of course, until then, Wakanda forever.